You got a copy of the agenda?
Oh,
Gotta pass them down.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. You know who you are.
I know, I'm stingy, I don't like to share.
And our joint staff is here to remind me of what we're supposed to say if we have any issues.
Oh, okay, very good.
Can the public have a copy of the agenda? It should have been released earlier.
It actually was available on the website.
Not, it's not on the website.
Amanda, you're up. Update on the November 4th election.
Thank you. Through the chair, I am excited to talk about some of the items we've been working on for the upcoming special election on November 4th. As folks might be aware, we do have one issue on the state's ballot, it's municipal proposition number 1. And the clerk's office over the last month has worked with the, go ahead and pass these around. We've worked with the League of Women Voters to create a ballot review for municipal proposition number 1. One thing that the goal of the clerk's office was to make sure that we provided a thorough review that would educate and inform the voters on Proposition 1, which deals with AO 37. So we had a complete review of AO 37. We sent it to a representative from the yes on one side and the no on one side, and we received the go-ahead from both sides that it was okay with them, and so we created this ballot review. Has information on the proposition along with information on voting for voters here in Anchorage. And in the past, the clerk's office has worked with the League of Women Voters to distribute these ballot reviews. We've had them put in the Anchorage Daily News and the Anchorage Press and distributed around town. We wanted to mirror this ballot review with the State of Alaska Division of Elections official election pamphlet, and so we actually had a ballot review sent to every household within the municipality of Anchorage. So it was a much larger project than we've done before, but we wanted to make sure that we were mirroring what the state does for their election. So
Very good.
we were excited to complete that project because it
I
was
think you didn't forgive people or propositions like the state did.
so.
Morning, Bill, Pete.
Hey, Pete.
That is, I think, the biggest update on the November 5th election. Early voting opened this week. It's here at City Hall and at the 2525 Gamble. We had ordinance that went before the body addressing some of the differences between the state's elections and the municipalities' elections, and one of those differences is the absentee polling locations. With the municipality of Anchorage, we use the LUSAC library, and so we got a waiver for not having voting there, and Assemblymember Peterson actually brought forward a really good amendment to post a sign at the LUSAC library letting folks know about the other voting locations. So the clerk's office posted that sign 30 days out from the election. So
Perfect. Any questions? If not, let's go around and do introductions. I was here elected, and Mr. Peterson, if you would start.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Bernie Hall, Assembly.
Big trade assembly.
The DNS attorney for the Ethics Board?
Ted Carlson, Ethics Board.
Keith Silver, Ethics Board.
Amanda Moser, clerk's office.
Updating for us on the alternative voting methods.
I have two exciting updates on alternative voting methods. First, I've been working with the chair of this committee to have a presentation at the November meeting from Dominion Voting, which is the company we currently use to create our ballots and create the database for which the ballots are drawn from. And so Steve Populius is the rep from that company, will do a presentation at the upcoming November meeting on opportunities for alternative votings. We had a meeting with him in February of 2014 or 13 about some different things that his company is working on, and so I think it'll be really good to let the committee know about some opportunities that we can look at for alternative voting methods besides having the 122 polling places that we currently have. So we are working to get him lined up for the November meeting. And we are also looking at getting another presentation from a local civic hacker by the name of Brendan Babb, who has been working on some really cool hacking projects over the past couple of years. Specifically, things you might be familiar with is he worked with People Mover to update the maps into a app that you can track the buses around town. But one thing that we're exploring is potentially the idea of having an app to request a ballot for the municipal election. So currently you can request a ballot by mail or by email or by fax. And we're exploring what would it take to be able to request a ballot through a mobile device, and if it's something that we could do for this election or future elections. So we will also have a presentation at that at your next meeting. So
Okay.
we have a checks and balance system that happens behind the scenes, and so if we did move forward with any sort of app-based request for ballots, we would all the requests would still go through the same checks and balance system that we currently have, to make sure that people aren't voting twice, and that they are in fact who they say they are, and so that app would line up with all those.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Questions, comments?
Our goal in the clerk's office is always to increase the voter turnout, and we
Right.
think that a technology-based solution might help get potentially a younger demographic engaged in the voting process.
Millennials are definitely hooked to their
Okay.
electronic devices.
Ted and then Pete?
Yeah, the court decision about ballots being in native language, is that going to affect the municipal elections at all?
Mhm.
It won't,
Follow-up, why not?
I have to get a better response, and maybe I can present that at the next meeting, but I know it's something that we had looked at in 2013, because we had this conversation, and so I'd be happy to present a better response at the next meeting. I'm probably not ready to do it off the cuff right now.
That's fine. but
Yeah.
Quite honestly,
I think
that hadn't really popped into my head, but when you asked it, and she said no,
I think that it's like and I'm speaking, I think it's a federal requirement, which local governing body, like local municipalities and local governing bodies aren't held to those same things. It's similar to the reason that we don't have to have the touchscreen voting and the ADA voting that the state's required to, but I'm gonna have to get you a more thorough response.
The reason I bring it up is out at the senior center, Juliet, that's what we have, the absentee voting and that, and there's a lot of native families that come up from Eklutna, and there's some that live there, and that have been discussed out there, and so that's.
thanks for bringing that up.
So let's look into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, Anchorage is the largest village in the state, so, like you said, there might be different federal requirements. And there would probably be a wide variety of different native languages that would be spoken in Anchorage too, so that might create a degree of difficulty.
Yeah, and I think,
But as far as the app is concerned, I think that's probably a good idea. I definitely think that would maybe increase the interest from a younger group of Alaskans, and it's like any other habit. Once you get started, it continues, and so if you can start them voting younger, then we're in a participation democracy, and so the more people that we can get to participate, the better off we are, in my opinion.
But it's not just natives, it's also the Hmong. A lot came up here, and I know they can't speak English. My wife teaches Hmong kids, and when their parents come in, the kids have to translate for the parents. So unless they're going to the ballot box with them, we've got a whole thing we've got to address, because they keep disenfranchised us, a lot of people that like to vote, but it's not their language.
Yeah, we got, what, 93 languages spoken in our school district, so
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, that opens a whole water discussion because, you know, the state's dealing with it in regards to native language, but when does it become an issue with all languages, and then how many ballots do you do? It's, anyhow, that's enough to get a headache over.
I'll prepare a response for the next meeting.
Okay, I want to drill down a little more into our alternative voting methods. And number one, Mr. Trini, I'm gonna ask if you chair the meeting on the 19th. I will be traveling that day, and I should be where I can call in. I really wanna be on the phone, during that meeting, so, but you will need to chair that. I'm looking at timelines, Amanda, and I'm looking at, you know, at where we've come so far this year. You know, I think we all kind of have in the back of our mind that we'd love to see us to be able to do this in 2016, in that April election. And, I think we need to start focusing more tightly. We gotta be giving consideration if at that time, you know, the decision is we're gonna go to a mail-in election. We gotta be looking at budgets in regards to what would possibly be needed to do that, in regards to equipment that would need to be purchased. And I don't know, you know, if you go to a mail-in election, then you obviously gonna need some polling places, but you wouldn't need 100 and whatever we got now.
22.
132, so I guess, you know, we'd be getting into, we need to get into serious discussions and consideration about how many polling places would we need, how we would locate those. My guess is if you go from 132 down to 32, you may have efficiencies in there that may cover the cost of the equipment just by the fact that you go into a different type of a voting system. I don't know, but it's something that we need to be thinking about, and starting entering into some discussion over.
Okay.
And then I also think we need to be having serious discussions, and maybe when we've got Dominion here and they're looking at other voting methods, is, you know, we don't wanna go to mail-in if, the reality is the next year everybody's gone to online, or, so, I think that's the other question that there's gotta be some serious conversation about, is when we're looking at alternative voting methods, what would that be in 2016? Or are we looking at mail-in, or is technology gonna be moved to the point that, so it's just some topics, Mr. Trini.
Technology needs to be looked at carefully. I was reading the paper today in Chicago. They found a problem with the computer system. People were voting Republican, and the computers changed it to Democrat.
Well, that's
Mm.
Chicago.
For every person they were voting for, the computer changed it to a Democratic vote if they voted Republican. And they don't know how many people got through before it was recognized they had a problem. There's one guy trying to run, he couldn't vote for himself, his name was on there, but every time he hit his name, it highlighted his opponent, and voted for him. So with computers, there are problems, we gotta make sure they take care of those problems.
So anyhow, I think that's the next meeting where we've got the expertise here, is when we should probably take a little bit of time and spend drilling down in what is the future.
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea. One thing that I liked from the presentation that I saw on Dominion is that there's a component to allow folks to vote electronically too. So I think that's helpful for folks that are abroad. I know we have had concerns in the past with ballots making it back from overseas in time and stuff like that, so it's nice to have other options.
Okay. Okay. Well, it may just end up being an app anyway. Keith, Board of Ethics.
So, we just had a meeting which unfortunately was on a notice of potential violation, which we can't discuss, but What we do have is about 4 changes, up to 4 changes, potential changes to code that we'd like to bring to you, you know, and get wordsmithed out so that we can then discuss as to, with you as to what, you know, what we see and why we want to do. One of them is to add, for example, the ombudsman as somebody who can bring a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, they don't have the ability to do it. Only the clerk's office and your office can do it right now, if the individual doesn't want to do it themselves. Oftentimes, people don't want to expose themselves. We've had a couple where some people will stand up and say, I'll make a complaint, but they don't necessarily want to. But if the ombudsman could do it, it makes it a little simpler. A couple other just definition changes. Lisa's got a list of things.
Well, disclosure of present economic interest, annual disclosure. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, there was some issue with, an awful lot with the disclosure, that it came with the assembly. The folks assembly said, well, we don't want to fill all this out, and we don't, you know, it came back to you, well, really, do you want to give us, you do a, you know, complete APOC filing? And the form was, you know, the simple 1-page form was a lot simpler for you to disclose. Is that the one you're talking about, Lisa?
Yes. And it actually is in the code to disclose present economic interest 30 days after you're elected, but there's another place in the code that says and annually by February 15th. So because we had a problem with the disclosure in the LRSA boards, we decided to make some changes that highlighted the annual disclosure. And there was an exception for the assembly that said if you've already revealed this in your APOC, then there's no need to do that annual disclosure. But the board really didn't want to go through 11 APOCs. When the form, there's a 1-page form of disclosure of present economic interest that just says, do you have municipal business or don't you? And that was a lot easier for the board to just go check, 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 check. And then also the requirement for the LRSA boards, and now we're trying to get all of the municipal boards and commissions in compliance for annual disclosure.
Yeah, because we've had, the one LRSA case that came up really highlighted that this person either chose to ignore or did not know that they were supposed to disclose present interest. And then it turned out that, you know, we found significant conflict. So, so we've asked for the form from all the boards, and the staff of the board is responsible to get those reports to us. You named off about 2 others.
Maybe Dee could describe the loophole with the political activity. We were going to include some standards for what is partisan or what is.
Well, I think that we've had a number of requests for opinions and some notices of violations that our political activity sections need to be rewritten. And I think it can be done, and it should probably be done between November and April, and maybe you have to wait till after April because we get into the whole thing of you, as someone sponsoring legislation that maybe has some type of impact. But our current code is pretty confusing, and it doesn't reflect some economic realities of modern life. For instance,
Sorry.
There's a rock and roll guy.
Yeah, I'll just let this
Can we stay with you?
well, certain policy decisions
That would be a fine, someone would be able to.
that are currently in our code, for instance, that assembly people can't publish, actively campaign or do such and such. You know, with today's technology, it's not like you're expending municipal funds to do brochures. Can't you in fact have a municipal website with a link to your position on a particular issue? In other words, let's say you're for or against AO 37. You're a policymaker. You're paid to have an opinion. So you have your website, and it has a link to a pro or a con. And other jurisdictions are really opening that up because the assembly people, mayor, they are policymakers. The people want to know their opinions. So anyway, some real updating. You know, what really are the policies here? They're couched in really sort of old type terminology. I think the world is a different place. Some of our code sections would suggest that the assembly people, the marijuana resolution, for instance, should be prohibited from certain things. is that really your policy, or is it really, did it go back to expenditure of municipal funds? And again, so much of the world now does not require expenditure of municipal funds to take a position. Shouldn't assembly people be able to take positions, shouldn't the mayor? So anyway, I think there's some sort of updating. Also, the state code of ethics has a page where can you do this, and it has a smiley face or something. I mean, simple instructions. I mean, right now, when you try to figure out what you can and cannot do as an assembly person or an elected official, it's very difficult. In fact, a couple of our opinions have not said we think this is good. We've said we think the ethics code is too confusing to say clearly that your behavior is, or your proposed course of action is prohibited. So it's not that this is a good thing, it's just we can't really say that this code prohibits it. So, and again, with some simplicity in mind. There's some pretty torturous provisions in the political activity section.
Yeah, I think right now ours is 55 pages.
Mhm.
You can bring it to 50 pages, I'll consider it. I wanna see reduction.
One section only, yep.
I wanna see reduction in volume.
Mhm. Yep.
What you need to keep, of course, is you need to go ahead and get it drafted and bring it to us.
Mhm.
And then we would sponsor whatever needs to be done, but what I would do is come give it to us, hand it to us, and I think that's when we really need to do a work session on it. I don't know that it would need to be a long
Work session as a whole.
Yeah, it's a body of the whole, and then get it in, because I think we all know that, there comes times that you need to update and change, so encourage you to do that.
And we're not necessarily trying to water it down, but sometimes a lot of it's just to make it clearer. We go look at it, and I know it was, some people were still around when they wrote it, some in the training.
Yeah, I know.
But at the same time, there's some stuff, like she said, there's some stuff that needs to be modernized and make it a little easier to
Right.
use. And we're not necessarily trying to, avoid work, but just to make it more efficient for
Sure.
us and you, and make it clearer to understand.
That's your job, that's our job, and then it's the body's job as a whole, so.
Well, but, on that, what brought that about is, when they came with that, initiative, that marijuana initiative, and whether or not you could take a stand on it. And I feel that, the people were elected to make a decision like that, and to stand up to do that. People are depending on that. And to say, well, we can't do that because of the ethics regulation, well, then we need to change the ethics regulation. So, to give you that authority to do that. Because that's why people look to you for decisions like that.
Pete?
Well, and part of the problem, I actually did not want to vote on that at all.
I know.
And part of the reason I thought it was a bad idea for us to be bringing that up is because we may actually be having to make a vote to opt in or opt out if that marijuana initiative actually passes, because local governments have an opt-in, opt-out possibility. And so I thought the fact that we were voting on it now, and then we may be voting on it again later, could create some problems and conflicts.
Anything else?
A couple of things that we'll discuss. The board has, our board has to discuss a couple issues that, so we don't have a clear understanding as to what the board has on a couple other issues with respect to, funding. As an example, and I'm not saying bring this to you, but as an example, the state law says if your budget says you've got $60,000 set aside to campaign for a bond proposal, for an example, that the school district does every year, is it okay to expend those funds? Well, I've had a lot of people come to me and says, I don't like this. I don't like the government using my money to campaign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And our code actually gives a bypass if it's been passed in the budget. And I know that they said it's supposed to be informative only, but what's informative to one person is advocacy to another.
Mhm.
And so that's where, we don't have a full good opinion on that one. Yes.
The same that could apply to the mayor, taking ads out in the paper, and they should come here in front of the Anchorage Assembly. before. Is that a proper use of city resources?
Well, my understanding, he actually brought some to you and you guys said no.
No, but he had, whoever the mayor was, actually went out, this happened before, went out and used his funds as a mayor to run ads on the radio, trying to get us, influence us on the assembly, and that's
Well,
not-
it's the same,
that's
it's the
not
same
proper
issue.
use of
Yeah.
city funds.
Yeah.
Be the same thing as if we have an issue. If I'm trying to use assembly funds to run a radio ad to get people to come and testify, that's a wrong
Yeah.
use of city
And
funds.
it is the same issue, and we agree, but, and I just, people I've had that come to me complain this, they don't like using, you know, they want wise use of their money, and they don't see that using the money to campaign to them, to vote one way or another. And you can look at the bond issues, you know, more than one way, but it depends on how you read it, and how you feel about it, whether it's advocacy or information. But I've gotta get agreement from the board before we bring that to.
Looking forward to that one.
Anything else, Steve?
Nothing I can think of.
Any questions that we have? You know, as always, I can't tell you guys how much we appreciate the time that goes into the job that you do. I don't know that you ever get any easy ones, but appreciate the fact that you're willing to sit there and make some really tough decisions.
Well, and we, coincidentally, also appreciate the fact that you folks as assembly people are bringing stuff to us ahead of time. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So that we can do an advisory opinion. I mean, we obviously don't, we're unpaid staff, but at the same time, when there are things that were brought up, as Senator Praney did, for example, on the resolution,
Mhm.
we made a suggested change. He took that, he made that change and it was brought forward.
I appreciate what you guys did by looking at that, and hopefully we'll have that same process in the future. Because it's easier for us to bring something to you guys, to get an opinion, before we launch it down the tube, without asking you guys for your opinion on it. And that causes problems downstream we don't wanna have. So thank you.
Very good. If there's nothing else, before we go to audience participation, I'm kind of putting fourth half in here. Anything that any of you guys would like to see on our agenda in the future, or any individual comments? Okay.
Off the top of my head.
Okay. Audience participation? Mr. Haberman?
My name is Eugene Hebron, I represent myself. This is the third meeting I've been at where a continued request is, where's the tape for the June meeting? Amanda and Barbara Jones were at those last meetings. I raised the issue, and it's still taking time to determine whether I know you did not have a July meeting, but if you did have a June meeting, I need the copies of that one before the body. And we're talking about how many months? This is October going to November, 3 meetings I've been out, and there's been denial. I also made a point at the last meeting, November, the last meeting, you had a special meeting in September, and there's a question about the notification you did on that, and what I need to see what copies of papers, and I made that request at the last meeting, that you had agendas or whatever you had before the body. I see there's a tape on the website for the September meeting, that's there. June is not, July you canceled, and we're talking about me bringing up the last three meetings between Amanda, Barbara Jones were either at either or meeting, and they heard this request and so on, find it. A comment was made on the website that this agenda was on the website. For your information again, this agenda is not on the website. The public is blind to know what you're discussing. There should be an agenda, there should be packets, and the public before, so the public knows, not just this meeting, but other work sessions the assembly does, the public knows what you've got going, so they say, oh, I better go there and so forth, and the packet should be out there. Transportation Commission, by the way, does put the information on the website, so you can, and I'm talking about AMAS. AMAS is questionable what they do, but on the website, where the NOAA says that NOAA state and renewed date, it's there for the Transportation Commission. They put that stuff in the packets and the agenda, same thing could be happening here, and should be happening consistently across the board. And on the ethics, since you have the Board of Ethics here, it's been a common denominator, we're blinded to know what you're discussing. And you could do the same thing. Maybe you having your emails is sent to you, so you know what your own agenda is, but the public
You
doesn't.
understand some of the stuff that we do is confidential, we can't really.
You have an agenda, you obviously, there's certain things you obviously understand about confidentiality, and I respect that mostly, but there's an agenda, when the meeting is and so forth. Also, the meeting on the calendar today, there's a special meeting for the Board of Ethics, that was at 10 o'clock, okay? And I also saw still showing 12 o'clock when we had two meetings, so.
No,
and
no,
they didn't- and they-
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting through the chair. They had their meeting at 12 o'clock. We had our meeting at 10 o'clock.
Well,
There were two meetings.
Maybe I can be in two different bodies here.
Yes.
The Board of
The
Ethics.
Board of Ethics had a meeting at 10 o'clock today. They had the meeting at noon.
No, I'm not talking about this body, the assembly, I'm not talking about assembly thing that we're here right now. There is a Board of Ethics, and you normally like at 12 o'clock.
We normally meet it, and we had a special.
But you made it
meeting
at
today.
10 o'clock. What I'm saying to you is, I see the notice on the website for today showing a special meeting for the Board of Ethics at 10 o'clock. But it's also showing that you're meeting at 12 o'clock too, that's still there.
They're noticed that they're at this meeting, so they are noticed as having a meeting because
There is a notice clearly identified for this meeting, for the Assembly
Yes.
Ethics and Election Committee meeting.
So
That's there,
the-
but there's two, it's showing that you're meeting in two different places, two times, 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. The other one wasn't removed, so the public is thinking there's another meeting that you're having, it's a double meeting.
Mr. Haberman, through the chair, they're noticed at the 10 a.m. meeting and at the 12 p.m. meeting because they had a 10 a.m. special meeting and they are here as part of this Ethics and Election Committee meeting, so they were noticed both times.
No, that's making an appearance that you know, I understand.
Okay, we're not
So,
gonna do a debate.
this isn't a
Mr.
debate.
Trainee, you're in the
There
debate.
is no June transcript at all for that meeting, I've looked for it. I've talked to
There's no-
persons. It
there's-
does not exist.
There was no meeting?
There's no recording.
There's no recording of it. It does
So
not exist.
there was no recording, but there was a meeting.
Don't know about that, I just know there is no recording of it.
There was a meeting, there's no recording.
There was a meeting.
Mr. Haberman, for my own edification, because I've been asked by different individuals, are you a resident, a voting resident of the city of Anchorage?
What's that gonna do with it?
I'm just asking, are you a voting resident within the taxpaying voting
This is
resident?
a public meeting, anyone from the public can be on stage. I represent myself, I live in Alaska, period. So what is that got to do with it? And, you got, I think all three are staff, correct, over there? I'm the only one from the public that's witnessing what you do.
I'm just trying to make clarification.
What's
I
that
have
got-
individuals that ask, that, you know, a lot of the things that you're involved in are things that have to do with the community of Anchorage, the taxpaying citizens are taking a part of, and they asked me the question, what does Mr. Haberman have to do with what we're doing in our community?
I tell you, and I've said it before, and I've released reports to you, and it shouldn't be confused, because over the years, and years, not months, you've got copies, reports. I look at two basic laws, and I appreciate you bringing this up. One is the Open Meetings Act, state law, proper notification of meetings, and the second
Mr.
law.
Haberman, that's not a part of the discussion. I just was asked a question, if
Well,
you're a
no, you
voting
just, you
resident,
asked,
and
you
I'm not
asked,
saying that you
why
don't
am I,
have
what's
access.
the connection between me here? Why am I involved and
I
attending this?
didn't ask that question. I didn't ask you why you were here. I asked you if you were a voting resident of the city of Anchorage. I didn't ask you why you were here.
You know I live in the valley anyway, what's
Well,
that got to do with it?
I just asked the question, it's been asked me, and now I know what to show it.
You know
Thank
very
you.
well what the answer is. Thanks for being here.
Anything else?
No.
I'm not
Motion to
saying-
adjourn?
Adjourn.
Second.